It is after midnight in the summer of 1777, and someone has crossed the palace wall. The intruders have not stopped at a gate or an outer courtyard. They have reached the roof of Jeonggak, the residence of Korea's new king. Below them is Jeongjo, 24 years old, barely a year into his reign. The palace is supposed to be the safest place in Joseon. Tonight, it has failed. Jeongjo survives, but he treats the intrusion as proof. The guards he inherited cannot keep danger outside. The armies around the capital answer to institutions older than his reign. And royal blood is no protection at all. He has known that since he was 10. Over the next 2 decades, this king will build a royal library, develop a force tied closely to the throne, and publish a military manual that turns diagrams into trained bodies. He will also leave hundreds of records of himself drawing a bow. On one famous day, Jeongjo shot 50 arrows and hit the target 49 times. The record preserves the hits. It does not settle why one arrow missed. That absence helped build the image of an almost perfect king, a scholar with the body of a warrior. But perfection is the wrong question. The better question begins on the roof above him. What kind of king does a hunted prince train himself to become? And was Jeongjo building a better kingdom, or one in which no one could ever put him in a box? A heavy wooden lid closes in the summer heat. Jeongjo is 10 years old. The man inside the rice chest is his father, Crown Prince Sado. King Jeongjo has ordered his son confined there, and after 8 days, Sado will die. The full tragedy belongs to another story. What matters here is what the surviving child learned. A palace could kill a prince without an invading army. A father could become a state criminal while his son remained heir to the throne. And a court that bowed to royal blood could rewrite what that blood meant. After Sado's death, the boy was legally adopted into the line of an uncle who had died young. The arrangement protected the succession, but placed a political wall between Jeongjo and his biological father. He grew under observation, surrounded by adults who understood that his memory of Sado was not merely grief. It was a factional weapon. Jeongjo studied ceremony, history, and administration with unusual intensity. He also learned that scholarship alone did not make a sovereign secure. When Jeongjo died in 1776, Jeongjo inherited the throne and the enemies attached to his father's name. By declaring himself Sado's son, he refused to let the court erase that lineage. Yet a crown did not end the danger. It brought the danger closer. In July 1777, men crossed the palace wall and reached the roof of Kyujanggak. Someone had tested the distance between opposition and the king's quarters and found it dangerously short. Look at the roof again, but look past the intruder to the failure beneath him. Guards had watched walls, gates, corridors, and courtyards, yet hostile men reached the king's residence. Jeongjo was furious not only at the plot, but at the weakness it exposed. That November, the court established the Sukwiso for royal protection. Its commander was Hong Guk-yoon, one of the king's most powerful early supporters. That solution revealed its own danger. Protection concentrated in one official could resemble a private following. The Sukwiso was abolished, but Jeongjo kept rebuilding the answer. The Jongyongwi followed in 1785. It developed into the Jongyongyang, a royal military organization responsible for guarding the king, defending the capital, and later protecting Hwaseong and the royal facilities at Suwon. Its growth shifted military weight toward the throne. The older 5 military camps had their own networks and commanders. Jeongjo's force gave the king another center of manpower, finance, and appointment. It was not a secret army. Its open display was part of its power. A king once dependent on inherited guards could now appear before soldiers whose institution existed because he created it. But where did necessary protection end and personal military power begin? Jeongjo answered through action. He inspected, appointed, reorganized, trained, and placed his own body inside the performance, standing before the target with a bow. The bow bends until the string is close to the king's face. Officials are watching. Someone will record the arrows, hits, score, and rewards. Royal archery was witnessed, measured, and turned into paper. Between 1787 and 1798, surviving records describe 262 occasions on which Jeongjo practiced or performed archery. A document from 1796 records a separate session in which he fired 15 willow leaf arrows and hit 9 times. An officer of the Joseon congratulated him, and the king recorded a gift of medicine. The sheet survives. It is not the record of his famous 49 hits. Its value is different. It shows the machinery around the bow: king, soldier, score, reward, signature, institution. The celebrated performance came in 1792 at Kyujanggak. Jeongjo fired 50 arrows and hit 49. Later retellings say he deliberately left one shot short of perfection. That interpretation fits a Confucian ruler who understood that fullness invites decline. But an elegant story is not a proven intention. The records establish the score. They do not enter his mind at the miss. They do show a king who understood the political force of disciplined ability. Every draw displayed steadiness. Every recorded hit became evidence of control. Every gift tied military men to a king who could stand among them without appearing ornamental. Jeongjo made skill legible to the court. The missing arrow matters not because we know he missed on purpose, but because even his imperfection became part of the performance. The intruder on the roof revealed a vulnerable body. The archer at Kyujanggak presented one no one should mistake for helpless. A brush moves across paper in one room. In another, a soldier repeats the movement of a blade. Between them lies Jeongjo's method. Soon after his accession, he established the Kyujanggak as a royal library. It became far more than a storehouse. Scholars worked close to the king, edited texts, researched policy, and entered a network whose advancement depended on royal attention. Jeongjo was building an intellectual instrument inside the state. The military counterpart grew beside it. The Joseon gave royal policy trained bodies. In the 1790s, these worlds met in the Muyedobotongji. The book presents 24 martial disciplines: figures step, turn, grip, thrust, mount, and fire. Movements that lived in instructors' bodies became diagrams that could travel. The work was compiled by men including Lee Duk-mu, Pak Jae-ga, and the martial specialist Baek Dong-soo, with practitioners connected to the royal military system. A manual records an ideal. It does not prove that every soldier moved perfectly. Training must make the ideal real. Paper opens. A hand traces the stance. Feet take position on packed earth. The diagram becomes a command, then a repeated body, then a formation the king can inspect. Jeongjo did not choose between scholarship and force. He made scholarship organize force. The Kyujanggak supplied research and policy language. The Joseon supplied guards, officers, and military reach. The manual placed the royal project in both their hands. But was he strengthening institutions or teaching them to move when he moved? The largest answer rose south of the capital, around his father's grave. The procession is too long to take in with a single glance. Officials, banners, guards, horses, carts, and onlookers stretch towards Suwon. In 1789, Jeongjo moved his father's tomb near the relocated town. Around that landscape, his government built Hwaseong between 1794 and 1796. It was a fortress, administrative center, commercial experiment, royal destination, and base of the Royal Guard's outer division. Claims that Jeongjo had definitively chosen it as a replacement capital exceed what the evidence securely proves. The documented city is dramatic enough. Walls protected the town. Military facilities placed royal force near the tomb and palace. Roads and gates controlled movement. Construction made grief visible as administration. In 1795, the king traveled to Hwaseong with his mother for ceremonies marking her 60th year and honoring Sado's burial place. The event was planned and recorded on an enormous scale. Procession paintings and the Woonhang Ulmayo Yungne Ayugwe show order. Rank determines position. Soldiers frame royal movement. The king's family history becomes a public route through the state. This was filial devotion, but not only private mourning. Jeongjo made a father who died as a condemned prince visible within royal ceremony. He made the road to the grave, a road lined by authority. At its end stood a fortified city tied to his military organization. The child who learned that palace walls could trap his father now commanded different walls around his father's resting place. Hwaseong served military and administrative purposes. It also staged memory. One project could honor a parent, strengthen a region, display ambition, and expand a king's political space. His private letters reveal how hard he worked to hold that space together. A letter is folded small enough to pass discreetly from hand to hand. The handwriting is hurried. The voice is not a polished proclamation. Near the end of his reign, Jeongjo sent private messages to Kyujanggak, a senior figure often described as belonging to the opposing political camp. The surviving collection contains 297 letters from the final years. A simple story would cast Jeongjo as an enlightened reformer and Sim as an enemy waiting to destroy his work. The correspondence shows negotiation, instruction, frustration, tactical cooperation, and a king managing politics behind the ceremonial surface. Jeongjo discussed appointments and timing. He evaluated officials with a bluntness that public documents often conceal. Scholars have read some letters as evidence that he coordinated positions before matters appeared in public. Exact insults and private motives still require verification against each individual letter. The larger fact is already destabilizing. Jeongjo's public government and private management were not separate worlds. The sage king could bargain with a supposed opponent in an impatient private voice. That does not make him a fraud. It exposes the labor behind the image. He counted people, anticipated reactions, adjusted appointments, and used private channels to shape what later appeared in public. Place the letters beside the bow. The arrow strikes where witnesses can see it. The private instruction moves where they cannot. Place them beside Hwaseong. The procession displays order. The correspondence reveals the negotiation required to produce it. Place them beside the royal guard. Protection changes who can pressure the king. Jeongjo expanded learning, publication, military organization, commerce, and administration. He also concentrated extraordinary energy around his own judgment. Could the system move when the hand at its center disappeared? The archer is gone, and the formation begins to come apart. Jeongjo died in 1800 at age 47. Later generations suspected poison, encouraged by the political reversal that followed. Suspicion is not proof. The records do not allow this episode to declare murder. What happened to his institutions is less mysterious. In 1802, the Joseon was abolished. Its military power and finances returned to older structures. A force that grew with Jeongjo and stood at the center of royal security barely survived him. That does not erase the scholarship of the Kyujanggak, the books of his reign, the walls of Hwaseong, or reforms that endured in other forms. Nor does it prove every institution was merely personal. It reveals the cost of building so much political momentum around one active king. Return to the target at Chundongdae. 50 arrows, 49 hits. We do not know whether the missing arrow was restraint, fatigue, accident, or something else. We know Jeongjo made the score visible. He displayed scholarship through books and scholars, and force through guards, manuals, inspections, walls, and processions. He placed his father's memory in the landscape of royal power. Even his private management emerged when sealed letters entered an archive. The child beside the rice chest learned that a prince could be isolated inside his own dynasty. The king answered by making himself scholar, teacher, archer, patron, commander, and organizing mind of a royal system. It was an astonishing answer. It may also have been the flaw. Jeongjo became difficult to remove because he made the state move through him. Then he died, and one of his most powerful creations disappeared almost at once. The record still holds the final arrow in the air. Not the arrow of a perfect king, but of a survivor who spent his reign ensuring that no roof, guard, minister, or inherited institution would again decide whether he was safe.